to get started? Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I promise I'll be really quick so I don't take up too much time from our speaker. My name is Yesenia Vasconez Yagual. I am the chair of the Inter-American Affairs Committee here at the City Bar Association, and we are so excited to be able to bring back this event to the City Bar. We have done historically the Ferrere Lecture for many, many years, and unfortunately was on pause because of the pandemic, but we're so excited to bring it back and to have here Mr. Heinzel, who's going to give an incredible presentation to all of us. I want to take a quick minute to thank the people who organized this event, including all of the City Bar staff, including the people behind you who have been serving us drinks and food. I also want to thank the Ferrere law firm for all that they've done. They've done so much heavy lifting, bringing Mr. Heinzel and organizing all of this as well. Specifically, I want to point out Carlos Vasconcellos, who you'll hear from in a few minutes, Daniela Torrales, Florencia Alpuin, and Gabriela Rocha for all that they've done with this work. And finally, to Mike Fernandez, who was our former chair for the Inter-American Affairs Committee, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, but also did a lot of work in the background of all of this. So thank you to him and everyone else. I'm going to pass it on to Carlos, who'll give a quick introduction to our speaker, and then we can get started. Please stay after the lecture because we will have drinks, more drinks and more food for you to share as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So I had written this great speech, then I just threw it away and wrote a perfect one, so I'm just going to read that one instead. So bear with me a minute. So it's great to be here. So many colleagues, friends, clients with us. After a 2-year pause, it's great to be back in New York. First, on behalf of Ferrere, I want to thank the New York Bar for organizing the Daniel Ferrere Memorial Lecture with us. I also want to thank Yesenia, the chair of the Inter-American Affairs Committee, and all the great staff of the New York Bar for putting up with us and tolerating our multiple emails and all of their great effort and support for today's event. For those of you that did not know Daniel Ferrere, you might be wondering, why does the New York Bar have a lecture on behalf of a Uruguayan lawyer who was the managing partner of a firm down south in South America, 3 of the smaller jurisdictions, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Bolivia. However, for those of you that actually knew Daniel, you know the answer right away. Daniel was a brilliant man. He was a visionary, and he was a pioneer. Somebody full of energy and dedication, and he was willing to go over and beyond for his clients and the legal community. He knew that each of our countries, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Bolivia by themselves, were perhaps too small, but he knew the power that the 3 jurisdictions had together. And he knew that working together in those 3 jurisdictions as a team, we really had something going on and that we really could add value to our clients. And he dedicated his life to that dream and that vision. And he was very active in the Inter-American Affairs Committee here at the New York Bar, ensuring that the New York legal community knew more about South America and of Paraguay, Uruguay, and Bolivia specifically, and having a better understanding of those 3 countries. Daniel Ferrere passed away more than a decade ago, but his legacy at Ferrere still stays strong. Dedication, his intelligence, his teamwork and perseverance, all of that in the aim of helping our clients are still our core values. And in sharing those values, we could not have a better speaker today than Sebastian Heinzel. Sebastian is a former New Yorker, and he's the CEO of the Heinsel Group, one of the largest players in the pulp and paper industry in the world. As you may know, Heinsel has recently become the strategic investor in Paracel, a pulp mill, which is the largest private investment of the history in Paraguay. And we are very much looking forward to hearing what he has to share about the opportunities and a few challenges, perhaps, of doing business in Latin America. So without further ado, I introduce to you Sebastian Heinzel. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Thanks for the invitation, Carlos. Thank you, Mr. Meyer, for having me here. For giving a presentation in my favorite city in the world. Being here today brings together, closes a few big loops in my life and in my wife's, Alessandra's life, because we met here nearly to the day 16 years ago. We were living here from 2006 to 2008. I was a young journalist at the time, and it was my job to search out, interesting stories about politics, about business, maybe something that had to do with Austria. And Alessandra, at the time, she was shuttling between her master's degree classes at Columbia and the financial district, where she was working on sovereign ratings in Latin America. So it's very easy for me to imagine our younger selves sitting in this audience today, because I was looking for stories, she was working with Latin America, our younger selves would be here today. So the speech, I've been asked to talk about why and how did we, as an Austrian company based out of Vienna, come to be the strategic investor in the biggest private investment in the history of Paraguay. Why do we do this? How do we do it? And what are maybe the larger opportunities in Latin America? And before I speak about that, I probably should explain a little bit who we are and what we do. The Heinsel Group is a 100% family-owned company based out of Vienna. And what we do, we produce. Let me see if this works. Slide. Thank you. We produce pulp, cellulose. That's our mill 2 hours south of Vienna in Styria. And so we produce pulp, we produce paper, and on the next slide, you can see that we also sell pulp and paper worldwide. We have a global sales network where we sell pulp and paper products to more than 100 countries in the world. And we're a little bit unusual animal in this pulp and paper industry, being both a producer and a trader. Slide, please. What is pulp and what do you make with pulp? What do our customers make out of pulp? It's tissue products, hygiene products. Probably the purest form of pulp that you get is your kitchen towel. That's the pure fiber. But on the next slide, you will see that you make a wide range of products out of pulp, paper, packaging, and many of these products are having a huge boom right now due to basically replacing plastic. So that's our business: producing pulp, producing paper, and selling it worldwide. Slide. Next slide, please. We also are part of the circular economy, because what we also do is, once that paper has been used, we actually recollect it again, sort it again, and make new paper out of it. In Europe, the recovery rate is actually more than 70% of whatever gets thrown away. We actually, and that's what we also do in our paper mills, make new paper from old paper. We have a large commitment to sustainability. We've declared that we want to be CO2 neutral by 2050, and which is quite a big thing in an energy-intensive industry. And we're setting ambitious in-between goals. And I'm mentioning it specifically because investing in Paraguay, investing in Paracel will help us achieve many of our sustainability goals. You might think that Austria, with its forestry, if you think of Austria, you think of beautiful landscapes and trees, is a good place for pulp production, and it is. But there is an even better place for pulp production, and that is Latin America, where the mills, usually the pulp factories, look much bigger, like on the next slide, namely like this. Over the last 1 or 2, 3, maybe up to 3 decades, a lot of pulp mills have been constructed in Latin America, so much so that, as you will see on the next slide, Latin America is now the #1 producer of pulp. What you see here, especially the blue bar, that's hardwood pulp, basically pulp made from trees with leaves as opposed to needles, which would be softwood. So Latin America is the #1 region with dozens of pulp mills. And why? And I'll show you on the next slide why. Because in essence, the trees grow so fast. On the left-hand side, you have the seedling being planted in December 2009 in northern Paraguay, and the other picture is 9 months later, and look how big that tree is. A tree in Austria takes 60 to 70 years to reach full scale. These trees, 6 to 7 years. So it's a different dimension. That's why there has been the climatic conditions in Latin America are so good that this has become the powerhouse of global cellulose production. What has happened is, in the meantime though, is that basically, I mean, Brazil is the #1 producer, but Brazil is simply running out of opportunities, running out of space, running out of locations to build yet more pulp mills. And the same has happened to Chile. And now even, you mentioned Uruguay, one of the smaller jurisdictions, even Uruguay has 3 of those factories. Paraguay, not yet one, and that's why we have committed to building the first one in Paraguay. Paraguay is the new frontier for cellulose production, and I'm pretty sure if we build this mill, that it will only be the first one of more to come. The Paracel project has also one special thing. It's not only a project about building a mill, but it's one of the largest afforestation projects in the world. To build this mill, we will be planting more than 100 million trees. And we will be planting them, as you see, on land that has been on flat land, mostly treeless land that has been to a certain way degraded land for cattle raising. So we are it's a large afforestation program, and that's why I would call this a 21st century mill, because it comes without the original sin that has been taken place and that has happened in other parts of the world. For example, like in Indonesia or other parts of Latin America, where first original forest was cut down to be replaced by plantations later. That's not happening in Paraguay because it is flat cattle raising land. We're planting for the first time, and that's why this project will also have a huge carbon sequestration effect, pulling 30 million tons of CO2 out of the air, and therefore fight against a global warming. And also, and you can see that on the next slide, the project has made a commitment that every original tree actually keeps standing, which means that out of the land that is part of the project, 40% of land will be left untouched where there was any tree, and only the other 60% will actually be planted. So it's production and protection, production and conservation. Now, few of the cornerstones. It's the largest private investment in the history of Paraguay, 1.8 billion tons of cellulose. The total project to get this, I mean, the sizes of such a project, we're talking about more than $4 billion that have to be raised by both equity and debt. We believe that this will have will be felt in the Paraguayan GDP to an extent of 2.5%. We're talking about the location is 20 kilometers north of Concepcion, along the Paraguay River. I mean, dimensions, I mean, we're talking about 8,000 people working there during construction, 4,000 people later having jobs, and 40,000 indirect jobs. I've already spoken about the land, 180,000 hectares of land and more than 100 million trees planted, a lot of CO2 captured. And as I said, this is really a 21st century project because it's sustainability in all its dimensions is deep in the DNA of this project. And also we'll be producing green energy, which is coming from Europe. Energy is quite a big topic for us right now. Now, how did we make that decision? Why do we, reaction that we always hear regarding this project is, that's bold, that's a pioneering project. So number one is we have been pioneers before. We built the first greenfield pulp mill in the former Soviet Union, specifically in Estonia, up in the Baltics. When shortly after Estonia joined the European Union, we were the first ones to build, in a coalition with others, a pulp mill there. And so we have, and also with our global sales business, we have always been focusing on emerging markets. So we know how to work on a global scale. We know the product will sell well because fiber is a product of the future. Replacing plastic, fiber-based products will sell well. I'm looking at Thomas here as part of our sales force. He will. Actually, there's not much technological risk because so many pulp mills have been built already in South America. So the design is very much similar to other factories that have been built. The next advantage is that in the meantime, in the region, not specifically in Paraguay, but in the region of Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, there's a lot of expertise in the meantime, a lot of very knowledgeable people who have built pulp mills, who have worked on pulp mills, and we have hired some of the very best of them for this project. It fits great into our sustainability strategy. Another consideration, to be very frank, is also the Russian-Ukrainian war. Us as a company based out of Vienna, we have our logical, we were always looking east, we were looking at building pulp mills in Russia. Now we are happy that we never did it because there's now a wall between Europe and Russia that won't come down for the next 10 years. So looking west or southwest has become very attractive for us to look at Latin America. But I think the most key consideration when we ask ourselves if we should do this was, who are we doing this with? Who are our partners? Can we build a strong coalition of partners to get this immense project off the ground? Next slide. And yes, we have that coalition of partners. We would never do such a project without strong local partners. We have this project will not be an Austrian project. This is a Paraguayan project. 2/3 of the project will be held by Paraguayan business families, 1/3 by Europeans with us in the lead. And what unites the shareholders, it's all family businesses. Now, what are the characteristics of family business? Number one is long-term vision, longer-term vision than corporations, and you need a long-term vision to get such a big project off the ground. Commitment, we're talking about family businesses. In the end, this is talking about family money. Everybody here has skin in the game in the truest sense of the word. Quick and fast decisions. They're not big layers of corporate structure, but quick, fast decisions. But what I would point out the most is entrepreneurship. And what does entrepreneurship mean? And my father, Alfred Heinzel, had a very simple sentence once, who said, he said in German, entrepreneurship is Dinge machbar machen, making things doable, making things viable, making things feasible, which means they're not doable yet, they're not feasible yet, they're not viable yet, possible yet. So the role of the entrepreneur is to make things possible that are not possible today. And you need people with this kind of mindset to do such a big, bold project. But what attracts particularly myself to this project is the sustainability side of it. What is, and we see on the next slide, as already. Okay, now this is still referring to what I said earlier, making an impossible, a seemingly impossible task possible. That's the big thing that we're doing here. And what attracts me particularly on the next slide is the sustainability credentials of this whole project, because it's really a 21st century. We're talking about the bioeconomy of the future, where we're not talking anymore about, okay, there's business and then there's some negative impacts and you somehow have to mitigate these impacts. No, the mindset is different. You make business with a positive impact on society and on nature. And that is possible. You see on the next slide that specifically this project actually increases biodiversity in the region. By planting a lot of trees, you get more animals and different animals than before. So it's not about mitigating downsides. It's actually having a positive impact. And that also takes me maybe to what is the larger context, the larger opportunity here is that I strongly believe that Latin America has extremely good cards for this 21st century nature-based bioeconomy of the future, because it's a change of mindset. It's not anymore about extraction. Latin America has vast natural resources. It's not anymore about extraction. It's about becoming circular. It's about production and protection. And I personally strongly believe that this is good business with good impact is possible. And if it's not possible yet, then we will just make it possible. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Paraguay is landlocked. How do you get your pulp to the shores and ships to where it's going?
Was also our very first question. But we were astonished to find out that the Rio Paraguay is one of the most commercialized, most trafficked rivers on the planet, on par with the Mississippi and the Yangtze. So there is already millions of tons of mostly agricultural goods, soybeans, wheat, other products going down that river. The large agricultural commodity traders are using that a lot. And I didn't include a picture of the river, but you see massive barges. And actually that's another, everyone thinks the location might be a disadvantage. But what's happening in Brazil, that they're building have built more and more pulp mills and had to go further and further inland. And then they have to build expensive rail lines or truck lines back to the port. A river is actually one of the cheapest ways of transport, because in essence you're floating down, and it takes time, but the river is not a bad exit out of Paraguay.
I think it's amazing how you've really gone the Paraguayan sort of buy-in. So it's a Paraguayan project, not just a Heinsel group project. I'd love to know about interactions with local communities as well, the community you're building in, and how you've gotten more of a buy-in, I'm assuming, from the community as well, not just the entrepreneurs.
So we did not, for a bit of context, we did not initiate the project. There was a local Paraguayan entrepreneur who had the vision, who said, this is happening in Uruguay, this is happening in Brazil, we need something like that in Paraguay. And then he teamed up with some Swedish project developers who he knew about forestry, but not about pulp and paper. And then he got the Swedish project developers on board. And then it became clear they need more investors. And they approached us because we are known as someone who can do both build pulp mills and then sell what comes out. And from the very beginning, even before we came on board, there was a large focus on working with local communities, not only because that's how you do business in the 21st century, but also because it's clear projects like this will need financing from the big development finance institutions, and the demands in terms of social inclusion, environmental sustainability are much more stringent in this project than if we would build a new mill in Europe. This is really impressive. Coming from Europe, this is very impressive. What is the work that is being done there? What is also interesting to see as we watch the project is how much it mobilizes the society, the economy. Give you a simple example. When the project started, there was not enough forestry, not enough trees. So they thought at the beginning we'll have to import a lot of wood from Brazil. But simply because people see this project coming and see there will be the pulp mill, there was already a lot of new forests planted. So there is the market is the project is generating so much momentum in the region that good things are starting to happen. This is because we can't just this mill. We need so many suppliers, everything from building company, construction companies, trucking companies, forestry companies, and this ecosystem is beginning to develop. That's why it is a pioneering project, and it will have its challenges and ups and downs. But we have seen similar things happen in other countries where a small village is now a city or a town or a city.
One of the slides showed a 200 megawatt power plant, a renewable energy plant. What was the fuel source? Did you use eucalyptus wood chips or for the fuel?
So in essence, when you produce pulp, when you get the pure fiber out, that's only about 50%. So the other 50% is actually biomass that you then use to create your energy. So this project will have surplus green energy. There's actually not many buyers of energy in Paraguay. So we believe new energy-based projects, like for example producing green hydrogen, could be a next step. So this richness of energy is actually a big advantage for Paraguay and for this project.
We talked about landlocked and some of the other issues, but what's your assessment of country risk, currency risk, investment?
Currency risk, we think, or the lack of currency risk, as it's so tied to the dollar and dollar denominated, is actually a plus for this project because worldwide pulp markets are denominated in dollars. And for example, the competitiveness of the Brazilian industry depends fully on how the real is doing. Reais is doing. So 1 quarter they might be great, and 2 quarters later they're suddenly moving back on the cost curve. So currency risk or lack of currency risk is a plus here. In terms of country risk, our assessment is that this is, and I'm sure many of you, it's an extremely stable economy, political system, society. It's a little bit, I would say Paraguay has been overlooked. If you see what's going on politically in basically all of the surrounding countries, then Paraguay is a comparative island of stability. So as I said earlier, we need strong local partners. We have a very clear alignment between us and our local partners that we stay away from politics, that we remain distant, equally distant to everyone. And frankly, I also believe the fact that there will be global banks, global development finance institutions backing this project adds a layer of protection against funny stuff. Huh?
As one follow-up question, so you alluded to the local component, but it looks like a large resource based on the photo only. So in terms of governance, have you worked all of that out? Is that something in progress? Or?
No, we are implementing there for sure world-class governance structures. So we as Heinsel, for example, we are for a certain number of board members, certain number of veto rights on important topics. Our colleagues here in the room know a lot about those negotiations, and we have already recruited independent directors. We're building a strong controlling financial controlling organization. So this has to be, because maybe that's one thing I did not mention. The way we as Heinsel Group operate is we focus a lot on entrepreneurship and on local responsibility, meaning we're not an integrated corporate structure where we direct and decide everything top down, but our factories, our companies all have their their full responsibility and strong local governance. And it's the same in this project. We don't have 10 or 20 experts that we can send from Vienna into Paraguay to drive the project. No, it's about building a strong local team and building a world-class governance to make sure that team operates in the right frame. Yeah. Very good question. I don't know. I think from a logical sense, it should be the value added, because the investment is a one-time and the GDP is a running. So actually the export. I'll ask the Parcel PR team. Yeah.
Internal or exogenous keep you up at night in terms of the success of the feasibility of the project?
Good question. The climate change. Because climate change can go either way. It can bring, and there's no way we can control it. There's no way we can predict, because we will be in this business for the next 30 years or longer, forever. There's no plan to ever get out of it. So if I look at this from a 30-year perspective, then my worry is climate change. Could be positive, could be more rain and faster growth, could be negative, less water, less draft in the rivers, and then you have to build different barges and so on. So this, I would say, there's no way for us to control it. We can contribute fighting against climate change by sequestrating carbon, but we won't save the planet with this project. But does it mean should we not pursue it because we're afraid of future climate change? No, that would also not be the right. But if that's for me the one thing that I would answer to this. Yeah.
Is there enough of a skilled labor force in Paraguay
you will definitely, and this is how it's going already now. If I speak about local, regional specialists, local expertise, today that expertise is Brazilian, Uruguayan, Chilean, Argentinian. So we're bringing in a lot. For example, I mean, just to scale up these plantations, to get to, to get them operating. This is a lot of, in this case, at the moment, Brazilian know-how and leadership. But the clear strategy is to keep this phase short and to develop local Paraguayan management as fast as possible. And we were talking about this earlier. The big advantage of Paraguay is a large number of young people. So this will, again, this is a project, a long-term project, but we've seen the very same thing also in other countries where you have the first generation of internationals and then local know-how and capabilities being built. Ladies first and then Freddie.
I have a question regarding what he said about the climate change, that you cannot control it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask that if you have had this experience in other countries where there's like this force majeure thing that you have to mitigate, or how do you control it?
No, but again, this summer in Europe has sharpened our minds in many respects. It's not only the Russian-Ukrainian war, but we have had cases in Europe where a pulp factory in Spain had to turn off in July and still standing. Why? Because the local river next to it was not having enough water and they were not permitted to run anymore. So that's a direct impact of climate change already today on the business. And that's why I also said having a second leg, a new leg outside Europe for us is a strategic consideration for us, why we said let's go into Paraguay.
The young people, generally in the greater Asunción area, how can you attract them to the projects?
Nice apartments and and lucrative pay. It will have to. I mean, we need the people in Concepción, and Concepción will see a massive development. We've seen this in other Latin American towns and in Asian towns, the boost that such a project gives. But getting the people to move there is key, and we're also not making compromise there. So we're very actively choosing not to even have an office in Asunción so that nobody gets comfortable. But it's a key point of attracting enough good people from wider Latin America to Concepción.
Sebastian, that's a very good point that happened in Uruguay, because when you're building the plant, lots of people go there and you have to put there will be around 8,000 people. And then when you finish and start just working, you don't need that amount of people.
Yes, so
There's a social impact during when you're building, and then that goes just, I won't say a few people, but it's half of that.
yeah,
And you have to do the whole thing together, because
yes.
we have some problem with the city that suddenly they grow a lot, and then
That's, I mean, it's you have to take care of an incredible amount of things in such a project, because this goes then suddenly with so many people. You have to have a lot of the work now is actually about building a mindset of safety and security, because you have more people driving, you suddenly have more car accidents, you suddenly have, somebody dies in a car accident, you have already a big negative problem associated with the project. So building a mindset of safety and security is actually the people you saw standing in that circle. They were actually doing a safety training. So safety first is a big company cultural thing that has to be built, and along the lines of what you're saying.
I'm curious to hear what you're using for sustainability metrics, and if you're using a certain standard. I noticed see, I think, up there at some point. I'm just curious to hear.
There's been, let's say, the drivers of the sustainability metrics and the sustainability studies and so on that we have to do is definitely the development finance institutions. So there's IDB, there's DFC, there's the also more national development finance institutions. I can refer you to the sustainability team inside Parcel if you want to know more about that. I can't answer right now on specific metrics. There was one.
I just wanted to ask about the eucalyptus trees. So
Yeah.
they're fast-growing and high value.
It's the advantage of eucalyptus is, yes, gaining fast in growth and also being very uniform in the end, meaning it's really a pole, right? And that makes it easy to handle later. You know, there's not many. I've seen other projects in Asia that were run on different tree species, where you would have much more branches, and that creates. So having something like a pole, in essence, it's like growing asparagus, just much bigger.
Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you for the presentation, and I believe you're going to make it possible. So thank you all for being here. Thank you from the New York City bar. We're going to share some beers and wine, and I hope you all are going to be with us next year for the 10th annual Daniel Ferrere lecture. And please enjoy at least one wine or a glass of wine or beer. Thank you.